Alright guys, today I want to talk about the Nike Air 180 in the OG Ultramarine colorway. And back in the day, these were my dad's all-time favorite running shoes. So I've already told you before, my love of Nikes comes from my dad's running. And when I was a kid, he ran 10 marathons, and his fastest one was in 1992 rocking these shoes. I've got a couple pictures of my dad. If you look really closely at him, you can see that he's wearing these shoes, and you can also see that he's sporting a mullet, which was popular back in the early 90s. I also have the t-shirt that my dad was awarded when he finished the race. Look close, it says 1992. And all of this stuff was on display in the Father's Day section of the Holidays exhibit at the ShoeZeum. Now I want to walk you through 8 different variations of the Ultramarine 180. These shoes are sick. Let's start here with a pair that was released in 2004. I actually scored this pair of kicks at a Nike outlet for $59.99, and I was so excited when I ran into a whole rack of these shoes, but most of them were like size 4 to size 8. Don't you hate when that happens, when you go into a Nike outlet and the whole rack of shoes is small? But there were a few of them in my size, and I grabbed them for my collection. So when I was selling shoes on eBay, I actually would stay away from these shoes because they're very temperamental. I don't know what it is about the material of the upper of this shoe, but they tend to get yellow. It's almost like they're a magnet to dirt. So I always stayed away from them, even though I knew that sneaker collectors would be really excited about them were I to have them for sale. This shoe was very innovative when it first came out in 1992. The big thing about the shoe is that the air bubble can be seen 180 degrees around. And I remember being a kid at the running shoe store with my dad, and he grabbed this shoe, looked at it, the Air 180, and he showed me, Jord, it's called the Air 180 because you can see 180 degrees of air. And of course my dad bought every size that they had in a size 12, and he ran in them for years. This shoe was also really big because it was the first time that Nike had a coordinated global launch for a shoe. So it was released all over the world at the same time, and there's a really cool video on YouTube. If you type in Air 180 Nelson Ferris, Nelson's like one of the earliest Nike employees, he talks all about the release of this super duper cool shoe. This pair actually came out in 2006 as part of the History of Air pack. And that pack included 8 shoes. It had the Air Max 1, 90, these 180s, the 93, the 95, the 97, the 03, and the 360. And of those 8 shoes, Nike's retroed over and over and over the Air Max 1, 90, 95, and 97, but the 180 is probably the 5th most popular of those 8 shoes. And I love these kicks. Another big innovative thing about this pair of shoes is going to be that the tongue is sort of like a neoprene Huarache-like material. So it really grips onto your foot, and they're super comfy. You can see why my dad was so stoked to run in these shoes. Now I want to look at this pair, which was released in 2013, and these are being dubbed the OG edition. Now, you already know how I feel about these boxes. When you look at this, it's going to say Air 180 OG, and the box is actually much more reminiscent of a vintage shoe box from the 70s. And I think it's really confusing for sneaker collectors when Nike's releasing a shoe, calling it OG, and they're putting it in a box that would have come out about 20 years before the shoe ever came out. Now, the reason why they're being called OG is that the outsole and the midsole are meant to look like they're old, worn out, vintage, like they were the original shoes from the 90s. Of course, they're not. They came out in 2013. Now, early on in 2013, Nike released the Air Max 1, the 90, the 95, and the 97 in OG editions, and also in engineered mesh edition. And a couple months later, they then released the Air 180 along with the classic BW. The next shoe that I want to look at is the engineered mesh edition that Nike released pretty much alongside with this OG edition. So I'm not really a fan of the engineered mesh. Really the only reason why I bought this shoe to begin with was because it belongs with the rest of its family. But you can see how it fits in along with the rest of them. And like I said, the OGs and the engineered mesh were released pretty much at the same time. The other 3 shoes from the History of Air pack have yet to be released as OG editions or in engineered mesh. Let's keep moving on. And we're going to check out this pair of shoes, which is actually called an Air Mariah. The Air Mariah first came out in 1980, and it's actually the first shoe to have full air in it. Not full visible air. That didn't happen until 1997. Guess what I had on display next to the Air Mariahs? Of course, I had a bunch of Mariah Carey CDs and DVDs. I bought all the toys and props for the ShoeZeum at swap meets. And you would not believe how easy it is to find Mariah Carey stuff at the swap meet. So these 180s I felt really belonged with the rest of these shoes because it's in the same colorway. Let's look at another pair of shoes. These are called the Lunar Air 180, and actually the upper on them sort of resembles the engineered mesh, even though this is not engineered mesh. The thing that makes this a Lunar 180 is going to be the midsole. The midsole is going to be made out of lunar material, which first released in 2008 with the Lunar Racer. The Hyperdunk has it. Very lightweight, cool material. Same colorway as all of these other 180s. I absolutely love it when Nike releases a new technology and they put it on a very comfortable, familiar pair of shoes that I loved back in the day. So I always get real excited when this happens. The next pair, Lunar Mariah TZ is what it says on the box. TZ stands for Tier 0. Certain Nike accounts are called Tier 0, which means that they get the super cool rare stuff. So these are going to be Lunar Mariahs. They're going to be the Air Mariah, but with lunar midsoles. Very, very cool shoe. Tier 0 means they're super duper rare. These shoes were actually ranked by Complex as one of the cooler shoes in the Complex era, whatever that means. I didn't realize we were living in the Complex era, but of course they think we are. The next shoe, the last shoe, is the Lunar Mariah ND. I don't know what ND stands for. The box is going to say ND on there. And there's also a little plus symbol on there, which means that these shoes are going to be compatible with an iPod. If you have a pair of Nikes and there's a plus symbol, particularly on the outsole, like a little swoosh with a plus symbol, that's going to mean that these shoes are compatible with iPods and Apple technology. Very cool. These are sort of the reverse edition almost of this pair right here. And there we have the 180 family. There's one other pair of Nikes that just came out in 2013. They're called the Zoom Ites, I-T-E-S. You gotta go on Google and look for Zoom Ites. It's a pair of snowboarding boots. I don't snowboard, but it's one of those shoes that makes you want to take on a new sport because they're that dope. Check them out.